All right, we are live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Wisdom Club podcast. And I am super excited today to have Ashley McDougal on with us today from all the way from Suffolk, Virginia. And
Yes.
I'm excited to speak with her. She is a veteran in the real estate industry, runs a team out there, and I'm just excited to have her, share with you what's going on with her out there. Bunch of stuff about her life and experience and what inspires her. And let's get started.
Sounds great. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
You're welcome. This has been a bit of a long time coming. We've known each other for what? How long have you been our group? What, a year?
Almost close to
Almost?
a year.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Okay.
about 8 months or so.
Yeah, great. So, without further ado, can you just give us a quick rundown of just all about you, where you're from? I mean, aside from the location exactly, and kind of what you're all about.
Yeah, so my name is Ashley McDougal. I am born and raised in Norfolk, Virginia, which happens to be about 30 minutes away from where I practice real estate. So I do practice where I was born and raised sometimes. I currently live in Suffolk, the land of peanuts. We actually are the people that made Planters peanuts. And then right down the road, we have Smithfield Food Packing. So we have a lot of industry in our area. We have tons of military. We're very well known for our Navy population, and we also have all the other branches here, Coast Guard, Army, and everything. So to be a realtor, this is a great market to be a realtor in because while you hear a lot of things happening across the country, it typically never is happening in our market because we have so many have to moves. So I can sell you a farm and I can sell you an oceanfront house all in the same day. So it's kind of exciting.
Wow. I love some of these things because every part of the country needs an industry to sustain everything regarding jobs and the economy. And these industries that you guys have sounds like they've been around a really long time, and so they can really sustain the people and have really good economy, and in turn have really good living out there. And the military, I mean, it speaks to my heart. We have a big military out here in Southern California. We closed down a marine base here in Orange County about 20 years ago, but there's still a ton of military bases, just south of us in San Diego and all that stuff. So we do get quite a bit of military, and we just love them because they're all just all about servicing and helping and taking care of our country. So I love that. And the other thing is, I keep telling myself, especially in this current market, and we'll talk a little more about that, is like, who are my have to move people, and who are I
Yeah,
have to, have to, because, with the interest rates and with the way things are, the people that don't have to, they're literally just completely turned off. Like they don't
for
even
sure.
want to think about it.
For sure. Yeah. And we have a lot of have to moves. I mean, we certainly have want to moves as well. And we're getting ready to come up on our biggest time of the year, the PCS time of the year, which is July, where a lot of people are moving. So we're starting to see the influx of potential buyers coming to market. We're starting to see a lot of military people getting orders. So just my neighbor across the street yesterday got orders to Italy. So, and I'm first one in her inbox. Hey, if you need help with real estate.
Yeah.
But so that's starting to happen right now. So with most markets in the country, they're seeing kind of a downfall. And I won't even say a downfall because I really believe it was seasonal. It just happened to fall in the same season of a lot of weird stuff. We really didn't see much of a slowdown. We stayed pretty busy, which was a blessing. And we always find ourselves a little bit different than the rest of the country, which is nice.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's one of the things that people forget to talk about is that, hey, is this normal, or is this like a really abnormal downturn? And, as the year started to progress, as we went into the slower part of the half of the year, it normally goes down, and but then just so happens that some of the news and some of the interest rates started to catch up with everyone, and then they really slow down. But that a lot of that is normal, and then a lot of that is because of the interest rates. But now we're in the new year, and the have tos are definitely out, and we're happily serving all of them. But that's what's going on, in the market a little bit. But you were born and raised in the area?
I was. So I was born in Norfolk, and I went to school all the way up to high school in Norfolk. Loved it, grew up, married my high school sweetheart. So we met in the 10th grade. We are still married. I guess I should preface that we are still married. We have two boys. I have one that is 20. He'll actually be 20 next week. He is a sophomore at Roanoke College. He wrestles for them. And then I have a freshman in high school who is 15. And obviously he's still in the house. And he is just a fun little one. I do believe God was like, you want another kid? I'm going to give you another one. And just kind of gave me the one. So he's the one that challenges me in most cases, but we have a good time. And I love being a boy mom. Most of my early years as my childhood was wonderful. I lived with my grandparents. Growing up, my mom was a single mom. And she got remarried when I was in the 5th grade. And through that, my stepdad was not very kind. He was extremely emotionally abusive and physically abusive. So she actually divorced him, and we moved back to the town, to Norfolk, to the area that my grandparents lived in. And I found out that my mom was on drugs. So at 17 years old, I graduated high school. And I started working 3 jobs and going to college full time to pay the bills because my mom had moved in with the person that she was getting the drugs from. So she left me in the house alone, and I had to figure it out. So I lived off my grandmother's front porch. She would leave her leftovers on the front porch, and that's the food that I would eat because I just didn't have money for food. So having that childhood and that upbringing puts a real fire in the belly to never want to go back and to help others around you and bring them along for the journey of success. I never, ever want to ever go back to that season of life. It was kind of funny. We were on a call the other day and somebody said they loved ramen. And I lived off of SpaghettiOs and powdered mashed potatoes for like 3 years. So I know what that means, and I never, while it was not the best season of my life, it was also the best season of my life, because if it weren't for that time of my life, I don't think I would have the fire in the belly and the grit that I do now, to knock one more door, or to write one more letter, or to call one more client. Having that grit and having that experience of knowing what rock bottom feels like, you will always stay your head up and keep going and pushing forward.
Yeah, and as I was thinking, and I appreciate that vulnerability and be able to share that with people, because there are a lot of people out there that are having a hard time, or are getting into the point where they're having a hard time, especially with what's going on, with the bank collapse and things like that. You just never know who is going to get, hit really hard on that. And
Right.
and what I heard was from you was not necessarily a survival thing, but more of that there is a resilience and the toughness that comes out of that, and knowing that, hey, it would never get any worse than this. And so therefore there's a confidence on top of that to say, hey, I'm going to do well. And knowing this contrast, I actually feel for some people who have never had that contrast, that have had it good their whole life, and not know what rock bottom is. And when they hit it, it's extremely difficult for them to handle.
Yeah.
So I can, just knowing you a bit, I can see that in you, just a very go-getter, for any other reason for no other reason other than just like, hey, this is what we do, because we are in the business of helping people. We're in the business of getting the best we can for them. And like you said, with the military, coming in or out or things like that, we just want them to be taken care of.
That's exactly right. And, servanthood leadership is so important. You want to serve your clients, but also I'm a team leader. So I serve my agents and my staff. And so I always walk into every day of how can I make their life better? How can I make the journey of being a real estate agent better for them? How can I enrich their life with something that maybe they didn't have before, that if I gave it to them today, it would completely change their entire career? Because when I first came into the industry, I had been a loan officer for 13 years before I became a real estate agent. And I knew mortgages, and I knew what had to happen. I knew all of that stuff. But I didn't know how to knock doors. I didn't knock doors as a loan officer. I didn't know how to, do the things like negotiate and stuff like that. I didn't have to do that. But I didn't have anyone to help me or to teach me either. So as a woman with no parental, I had no mother, my dad was in jail at the time. So I had to find a tribe of women who I liked a little bit of this person, a little bit of that person, and I would take little pieces of all of these women in my life to create the sum of them is me. So I truly found a tribe of people who I wanted to be like, and I just modeled the things that they did. And that's really, truly who I am today. Just because I don't have family. I'm an only child. So it's truly just me. So for me, going through that situation, relationship is so important and priceless. And when you find good people in your life, whether it be a leader or a mentor or a friend, you have to hold on tight to them. Because like I said, all I have is my husband and my kids and my friends. And so I think it goes without saying, having a tribe around you, especially when it gets tough, like what people are going through right now, and really getting just feeling down. Your numbers are down, maybe your bank account's down because your numbers have been down, and you really don't know what direction to look at. The very worst thing to do is to stall. You need to find somebody to reach out to that can help, give you, encouraging you, help you with some pliable to-dos, that kind of thing.
Yeah. It's there's so much there, and I want to kind of, reiterate a little bit here because how long have you been in the business total?
So I was licensed for real estate in 2013, but I started, or 2015, but I started mortgages in 2003.
2003. So combined between the two, we're looking at 20 years. I have not spent that many years in the industry, but coming in to the industry from tech, where things were more structured. When you're working in an agency, there's a structure in the agency. But going into real estate, there was no structure. Like, you had to find your structure. Like, everybody has to go through this ringer of like, what are you going to do? Because one agent does their things so much different than another. And who should you follow? Who should you listen to? And what works for you? What doesn't work for you? And I just love what you said, because a lot of, nobody, I don't think anybody come into the business knowing how to door knock.
Right.
Right. How to talk to a stranger on the phone,
right.
And how to figure out like, hey, what path do we take? And if you happen to be on just slightly on the shyer side, like that's even like exponentially harder. So I think people coming on the team is especially important for people to actually do come on the team when they start out, because they get to learn that stuff.
Right.
And the people that don't, like, it takes many years to kind of find their way and to kind of see how things are done. And so I appreciate all team leaders like you to take on that task, because it's not an easy task, and people have their own, faults and learning curve as well. So we have to have a lot of patience for that. So so that's awesome. I'd love to go back in time a little more. And kind of how did you get into being in real estate and loan officer, and then kind of how did that kind of transition to where you are today? Because you are a successful team leader, you are teaching and learning and teaching all the team members, as well as being out there for anybody else who was trying to learn as well. But that didn't come with no cost. I mean, this last 20 years, it had to be a journey for you. So can you walk us through that? I mean, not everybody really fall into being a loan officer. Sometimes they do,
Right.
but most often, people are like, well, what is attracted to me about selling loans and getting people their loans so they can go buy whatever they want to buy?
Yeah, that's a great question. And oddly enough, my mom was a real estate agent growing up. So when I was a kid, I remember being, I don't know, maybe 8 and just begging. At that time, the contracts were on carbon paper. So you had to pull them apart
Hmm.
and then you had to fax them. They were 6 pages, maybe, but you really did have to pull them apart. You typed them on a typewriter. So I would beg my mom, please let me pull them apart. I just want to pull them apart. I just wanted to pull them apart and put them in the fax machine because I thought it was the coolest thing ever. And I remember going to show houses with her. I remember a couple times some like horror stories of like being in the car and some things she had to call the police one time. It was just crazy. So early in my life, I was like, I never want to do what she does. She's stressed. There's all this weird things that happen. You have to call the police every once in a while. So when I was in college in radiology school, believe it or not, I was a part-time team assistant for her team. And all I did was organize the termite inspections, make sure the title company had the documents, did all the things an assistant would do. And our loan officer, who was um, the team loan officer or whatever, he told me one day, he said, I really think you're too smart for this. You should be a loan officer. And I was like, no way. You throw your phone twice a week in this office because you're so mad. There is no way I want a life like that. He said, and I mean, I'm 19 years old, so I'm super, super young. And he's like, I'll pay you $20 an hour. Well, at that time, $20 an hour, like that's a lot. And still today, I feel like that's a lot, but it's a lot more common. So I'm like, okay, I'll try it out for $20 an hour. So I started as a setup girl at a local mortgage company. It was a correspondent lender, and then quickly moved up to processing, and then quickly moved up to originating. So that's how it all started. And I always jokingly say it's like quicksand because you can't get out. Once you're in the real estate industry, it's really hard to get out because it becomes something that you're passionate about, and it becomes almost a part of who you are. So I left that mortgage company, went to a few other ones, got sold out. You know how the whole mortgage world goes. They buy out each other and all this. And then I went to Wells Fargo at the very end, and I knew that was the last of my mortgage life. I was exhausted. I had gotten up to being a manager. I ran a joint venture. It just got exhausting. So I decided to come over to real estate. I went to an open house with one of my agents. No one came. Go figure. I asked all the hard questions that was always one of those. I think they get paid 3%, but I'm not really sure. Who pays their taxes? I asked all those questions, got in my car, called my husband and said, hey, I'm quitting my job. I'm going to start real estate school on Tuesday. But this weekend, I'm actually going to go, and I'm going to fly to Texas to visit a friend before I start school. And he's like, okay. So I did, and I never looked back. But what's funny is the mortgage company that I was with at the time told me I was never going to do well in real estate and that they would give me a $20,000 bonus just to stay. And I declined it. Never told my husband until like 2 years ago that I declined it. But I'm so glad I did, because I have grown in ways that, not just as a real estate person or not just as a person that knows how to write a contract, I have grown as a person. And it's because of the mentors that I've put in my life and the people that I surround myself with that have spoke into areas that they don't even know that they've spoken into. But just them being them in my world and in my circle have helped me sharpen so many places of my life that really needed to be, sharpened and refined.
Yeah, and aside from the difference between working, for a bank, working for someone, versus kind of working for yourself, in real estate. Aside from that contrast, what was it that caused you to make that leap? Of course, you were in the loan business for a long time, and it may have been the situation, but there was something that must have sparked something, whether it's at the open house or whatever, that made you made that, drastic shift and say, hey, this is what I need to do. Like what really, went off for you?
So I had a moment, an aha moment, and I thought to myself, and most people who are listening that are mortgage lenders are going to know exactly what I'm talking about. But when you are trying to get a real estate agent's business, you almost feel like you're courting them, like you're having to date them and stay on top of them and do all of that. Well, it's exhausting, especially when you're married. So I'm courting all these other people and it's just a lot. It's just a lot. So I had a moment. I remember driving in the car thinking, there are so many more people that own houses that I would rather do business with than there are realtors. Why don't I just become a realtor and I get to work directly with the people versus the people that I'm sitting here courting and trying to get them to send me a deal here and there and that kind of stuff. And so that was the moment it clicked. And I was like, I can do this. I totally can do this. So it was more of the idea that I had a bigger audience and a bigger pool of people to come business to get if I were a realtor versus if I were a loan officer, where I could really only get really, a few realtors, because you have to handle them with kitty gloves and make sure they don't feel like they're on the back burner. And so my capacity was a lot bigger as a realtor versus a loan officer.
Yeah. And you were talking about like you didn't know what the commission or this or that, around real estate, but you had the knowledge of the loan world. Like anybody who comes, like, okay, you literally see someone, and as they talk, you're like, the numbers are adding up to like, okay, this
Yes.
is what you can afford, and this is what you can qualify for, and all the kind of stuff. That's the experience that a lot of agents don't have if they never been in that position before. So I think it's super super valuable. So like, so then you can know like, oh, this person is ready to buy or ready to do something, or this person is not, and how to kind of do all those things. You find that was an advantage for you?
Oh, immensely. And I've actually taught trigger words to my team. So when you're at a buyer consultation and there are certain trigger words that if they say this, then you need to ask more, you need to go in some deeper questions. If they, are paying a $2,000 car payment and they're making $40,000, there's an issue. Like, so, and that's a drastic one, but I'm just saying, like, honestly, there are trigger questions to ask. Like, when's the most recent you bought a car?
Yeah.
And if they say last week, it's like, okay, no, let's scooch on back, you
Yeah.
know? So there's things that you can ask that you can not pre-approve them, but you can see if they're ready and if today is the day. So then you can call your loan officer partner and say, listen, this person is definitely ready. Or if not, hey, don't rush to call this person back. I don't feel like they're ready, but they could be, not now business, but maybe 6 months from now.
Yeah, I think that's just, is really important, because a lot of times we end up spinning our wheels with people who just simply aren't ready, and sometimes they get annoyed, like, hey, I'm not ready, because this has to happen, that has to happen. But to speak on the part regarding the pool of possible clients, for you, like for example, we have probably in our county, 20,000 real estate agents, and probably 80%, are not super active, and they just part-time, they're running their family, and it just so happens to have a license. And then,
Right.
of the 20%, maybe not all of them are, doing deals all the time, and maybe like top 5% are like doing everything. So,
Mhm.
but we have 120,000 people, just in our city, right? and then
Mhm.
so there's just a lot more people to be able to serve. And I can really do feel for all the loan officers, loan sales reps, and stuff like that, because they do have to chase these real estate agent for business and stand out and stand in front of them. And I'm always trying to be as kind as I can to them, and always give them an opportunity if it seems like a fit. So we understand that. But so tell what's going on now. Let's just say, how has COVID has changed your current business, and how has it not changed your current business? And has your team grown, or have kind of uh, you've or are you kind of stable kind of where you are?
So, great question. So, during COVID, we took the time to really evaluate where are time vampires in our life. And what I mean by that, some things that we could scale out of our daily schedule and buy back time. And I know this is going to probably come across, and everybody in the world's going to tell me I'm the worst agent in the world. But I actually, because of COVID, the title company that we use, they started Zooming us in because we couldn't come in. Well, I've kept that practice. So, because it saves me easily 3 hours a day if I have a closing, driving to the closing, sitting in the hour-long closing, driving back from the closing, it takes up so much of my day. So one of the things that I've started doing in my practice is zooming into the closing. I'm there. I can answer any questions, and more importantly, I'm actually sitting at my desk with your file. So if there really is any questions, I can answer them versus being like, well, let me call my assistant, get her to pull your file, da, 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 So there's little practices that we've brought into our everyday life through the COVID era, just by learning, either we couldn't do them at that time, or it's just a better way of doing things. So I do feel like COVID gave us all a chance to reset a little bit and reset some of the things that we've done because we've always done it, but we don't know why we do it. So that was one of the things that our team has picked up, and saves us lots of time. So we're happy about having those things. I'll say we've grown substantially over the time of COVID, and I think a lot of that is because our area, you were on one side of the fence. You were very fear based or not afraid at all. Like there was no in the middle. And there were also leaders and companies that were extremely fear based that shut the doors and nobody could do business. And so while I know a lot of parts of the country also were that way too, but there were a lot of parts of Virginia that weren't. And so when you have other real estate agents, for lack of better words, eating your lunch because you're not allowed to go out and do business, but they are, that really set off a lot of people into coming and looking at different avenues because they couldn't do business. Their leader wouldn't let them in the office. So we did grow a good amount. We actually got an office over COVID. We were the crazy people that were like, yeah, let's try it. And that worked for a little bit. We now are in our permanent office, which is much greater. But I think COVID was an opportunity. Also, I don't think it was all negative. So yeah, that's kind of, we were the lucky ones that had a great year that year, grew some different, habits and practices because of it. And we're just going to take it for what it is.
Yeah, and real estate is just it's always local, no matter what. Okay, it really only matters the town that you're living in or the town that you want to live in, because the next town over could be completely different. And I just love that you can do business in any kind of way that you want, but at the end of the day, it's just like life. It's like the stock market. When the stock is down, how are you profiting? How are you still continue to grow when it's down? How are you continue to grow when it's up? And it's the same thing with you guys. Like, hey, when this happens, where can we fill in? That's still a need for the world, a need for people to be able to continue to do our business. And unfortunately, the people that are not flexible and are not, looking at where the opportunities are given the current situation are the ones that are like, you know what, we're just going to fold up,
Yeah.
So,
So before we had the mandate where you were not allowed to be around certain people, like I think it was 250 people outside. This was like earlier part of COVID. I did a client event. And during that season, all of my client events were food trucks in my front yard because I couldn't get like gathering space inside. I did an ice cream shake food truck and had the biggest attendance ever. There were 300 people in my front yard.
Wow.
So we took COVID and we would hand deliver pizzas. We would do food trucks. Instead of doing Easter, like an Easter egg drop where everybody came to us and we dropped eggs and everybody did an Easter egg hunt, I egged all of my egg clients' front yards. So I hid eggs in their front yard at night, and then I put a stake in the yard that said, "You've been egged." So like little stuff like that actually we may do again this Easter because it was fun and we can do it on our own time. It's cheaper. So there has been good things that came out of that season.
Well, there's just so much appreciation. I know for my area here, um, uh, specifically my neighborhood where I live in, and I've lived here for over 15 years.
Okay.
And I don't know that many neighbors. Everybody seems to keep to themselves, and there's a few people that I kind of see here and there. But then as soon as COVID happened, and people were starting to feel like, oh, okay, this is more of a permanent thing. We just have to deal with it, make sure everybody is safe. And they started coming out, and there are people working from home, and they started walking the parks and they're walking the trails. And then I started seeing them because I'm like a lifelong, hiker, and so I'm on the trails all the time, and I just never saw anybody, right?
Yeah.
But then after I want to say like probably late 2020 and like early 2021 started happening. Everybody started coming out of their houses with their new dog and with their kids and things like that. And I got to talk to all of them. And today, I know more people in my neighborhood over the last probably year and a half than I ever have in the previous 15 years.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's
You know.
amazing.
And so I really appreciate somebody like you what you're saying, like, oh, we're just gonna have a ice cream truck come out, or we're just gonna we can't do Easter this way, but you know what, I'm going to put out the eggs, and then I'll have you guys look and you guys have fun and know that somebody provided something, and there's a community here that's alive, and I'm here to make sure that life can still go on and we're not just stuck in our house the whole time.
Yeah, so big. And I can't tell you how many of my clients were so appreciative of it. Because, when they have young kids, that was a big thing. Like Easter egg hunt, we're going to all go and we're going to have fun, and that's going to be a fun day. Well, when they're all shut down, it's like, do you even celebrate it this, like, what do you do? So it still gave them something fun to look forward to. And quite honestly, it was kind of fun to do. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I can imagine like people waking up in the morning or like, hey, what's the sign here? And like, oh, there's
Right.
eggs there, and then kids run out and go find the eggs. I could just imagine, like, I want to just be like a fly on the wall and watch what they do.
Right. Right. You're like, oh my gosh, we've been egged.
Yeah. So that I would say, because I'm such a huge relationship and community guy, that when I see those type of things, it just lights me up. That coming out of COVID, people are more friendly. People want to know about their neighbors. They want to see how they are. And even, late, last year when people were starting to get a little cold, a little flu, and it's like, hey, you okay? Is it COVID? What do you need to do? Do you need some help?
Yeah.
That kind of thing. So everybody just hyper, sensitive to our neighbors, which we should have been, for a long time, but we just gotten spoiled, figured that everybody's fine, but everybody's not fine. I mean, I talked to so many people in the last year and a half. Their family member passed away, or just so many stories. I was working with a client, and that they needed to get a hold of the architect that had originally designed the house that they've worked with for years. And I've been calling them, and nobody is getting back to me. It turned out about a month later, the architect's son called me back and say, hey, I finally got your voice message, looking for my dad, and I'm sorry to say that my dad has passed away from COVID.
Oh.
you know things like that. And then we like, I'm sorry, I don't have paperwork for you, I don't have the diagrams or drawings for you that you needed, because all this stuff is in boxes. I have no way to figure out how to even get it out. And then another architectural company has come and bought all that stuff, and I don't know what they're going to do with all of that. You know, you can
Oh,
imagine just rolls and rolls of, you know, designs and stuff, like all these people's houses and things like that. And so like I never expected that, you know, at all, right? And so little things like that have popped up here and there, and just knowing like, hey, this is a real thing. People got to be careful. It's no joke, you know.
it is.
So really really just do everything to take care of people one way or the other, so that people can be safe.
Yeah, so our team during COVID, one day I was scrolling through Facebook, and one of the places or one of the industries that I failed to mention earlier, we are heavy medical in our area. We have the Eastern Virginia Medical School, we've got CHKD, I mean, we have a ton of medical. And so I'm scrolling through Facebook, and I see like all of my friends that are in the medical industry just really having some really hard time. I mean, it was mentally, physically, you name it. And so I put on Facebook on a whim, I just said, hey, I want to adopt a nurse. And I want to share gifts with this nurse and encouraging words. I just want to make sure that nurse knows that a stranger is rooting for them. And so I put it out there, totally forgot my cousin's a nurse in this area, so I felt like such a jerk for writing it. But so one of my past clients, she calls me, she's like, hey, I saw your post. I'm like, oh, cool, thanks. And she's like, I have a friend who works at CHKD. Can I connect the two of you? I was like, yeah, sure. So I'm thinking this lady is a nurse. Well, she is the head of the residency at CHKD. And she said, hey, I saw your post as well. Ashley, her name was Ashley. Ashley sent it to me. And I wanted to see if you could take on 300 people, 300 residents and nurses and stuff. And before my brain could think about it, my mouth said yes. So I was like, yeah, sure, we'll do 300. Absolutely. And I like hung up the phone, and I was thinking, okay, how are we going to do 300? We'll figure it out. It's not who, it's when, right? We're going to get it. We're going to get it. So I made a Facebook post, a page, and I called it Adopt a Hospital Hero. And at the end of it, we had gotten about $10,000 in donations. We had like 400 people giving gifts and dropping by stuff. And then weekly, we were taking some sort of basket to their lobby, to where they like hung out and just kind of relaxed, which didn't happen in COVID. And we were theming it. So our first box was a bunch of bananas, because they weren't having a chance to eat. So they were getting cramps. They were really just working the whole time and on their feet. So we had a grocery store donate bananas, and we wrote funny faces on the bananas, and we put a big sign over it that said, this shift is bananas, kind of playing off of that song. So we did fun stuff like that, and all yellow, bright, cheery stuff. You know, one day we did like an American basket where we did Cracker Jacks and Slim Jims and, you know, RC Cola, and just fun stuff for them to look forward to. And that was really fun. We were actually in the paper and on the news for that. But it was a great time, and it was, I mean, they appreciated it.
Yeah, that's amazing. We all just we're just only one idea, you know, away from like this whole community being together, and that we can contribute to people like that, because, you know, think about it, they're overworked, they're putting their lives at risk, they're afraid what might happen next, and then they're seeing other people, you know, getting sick. Like, I can't even imagine how people can, you know, can go through all that. And for somebody like you to just have an idea like, well, I don't know what's going to happen, I'm going to put up a post, and then let's see, you know, if anybody needs help. If it's one person, great, you know, we're able to just love on them and all that stuff. But it turned out like, you know, 300 people, and then you had said, hey, we got this idea, these people, you know, need help, and then the community all come together once they can see that, hey, we want to contribute too. So that's an amazing story. So thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely.
So I want to be respectful of your time, but I also want to give you a little time to kind of talk about what you're working on, you know, right now with, you know, your area, your team, and all that kind of stuff. What's happening?
Yeah, so we are steady growing. We just got a team manager who is amazing. And so she is really knocking it out of the park, getting everybody organized, onboarding agents. So we're super excited about that. I have a few speaking engagements this year, so that's also very exciting. I love to speak. And then I also coach agents on the side as well. So lots of really fun stuff happening. We're doing a huge women's event at the end of the month for International Women's Day. We have the head anchor to our news channel coming to speak and talk about life balance. If that exists, we're not sure if that exists. That's still like a myth to me. But yeah, so we just have a lot of really cool stuff. We just booked our venue for our big conference that we do every year called No Agent Left Behind. We're doing a 90s theme because I feel like the market's going back to when you had to write note cards and you had to really do back in the 90s when you worked. So everybody's going to dress up like 1990s realtors with the big shoulder pads and the big tight belt. So it'll be fun. So we're super excited about all the cool stuff that's happening and ready to take 2023 on.
Yeah, well, my mom was a '80s realtor and a '90s realtor, so I can't even remember what that looked like. But same thing like you, I grew up with my mom being in real estate, but the difference is that I wasn't so excited about all the paperwork. I was just a I was just a boy that loved his bike, and because it gave me freedom to go anywhere I wanted, to go visit friends. Even if I had to ride 2 hours to go see my friends, I'd do it.
Yeah.
And so we were just very wrapped up in that growing up in the basically the age that your son's in, around 15. I was just thinking to myself like what a great age to be, because everything is just so amazing all the time. Ashley, you are amazing. I love the things that you're doing and just the outreach in whatever direction that you decide to do, and you take it on with with all of your enthusiasm and the mission to just help others. And as per tradition, we always ask our guests to share the quote that they that inspired them, that they live by with the world. And so, Ashley, take it away with your quote.
Okay, so just a little preface on this. This is in both my house and my office. And if I knew I had to read it in front of everybody, I would have picked a shorter quote. No, I'm just joking.
No, no.
This is actually my favorite quote of all times, and it's by Steve Jobs. It says, "Here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs and the square holes, the ones who see things differently. They're not fond of rules. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify or vilify them, but the only thing you can't do is ignore them because they change things. They push the human race forward, and while some may see them as crazy ones, been called that a few times, we see the genius because the ones who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do."
I love it. It is one of my favorite quotes as well, but we don't hear that enough. And I think it was also part of a commercial that they had for Apple, which we just can't never get tired of watching it. But I think that you are one of those people that just wants to stand out for no other reasons to be able to help people. And I was just thinking a couple days ago even. Not was not thinking about you at the time, but what would happen? First of all, because I am right now knee deep in all of the AI technology that's happening and how it's going to change every single industry, and more importantly, how it's going to change our industry here in real estate. And so I'm super passionate about it because I want to kind of help people along this path, because really everything is going to get changed upside down again. And see and be able to help agents is one of my passions. But can you imagine if Steve Jobs didn't exist and we didn't have the iPhone? How different the world would be today,
Oh,
and
well, you know what's funny? I actually have, in our day when my grandparents were buying their house, it was all note cards, like little, like index cards almost, and they would have them in binders. I have the index card from my grandparents' house when they bought it, and it's hanging in my home office. And oftentimes I sit back and I'm like, Lord, if I had to go into an office, go through a binder, drive to the house to see what was inside, only to be totally disappointed because it had gnarly carpet and needed updates. Like, I could not imagine. You are so onto something for sure.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm excited to kind of share with people how that's going to change the real estate world, so that we can kind of get ahead of it. Coming into real estate from the tech world, I was realizing, like, what do you mean? I mean, when I came in, there was still some people, very few, some people still doing faxes and stuff, and
Right.
but then I'm looking at kind of like, well, how do you actually go through the process of buying and selling a home and all that stuff? And it turns out everybody was just, putting their own little thing together. Well, we do this and we do that. And some of it, some people write it down, some people don't write it down. They just teach it by rote. Right. And I'm like, gosh, you guys are still like probably like 10, 15 years behind as far as what everybody else is doing in tech. Now, granted, tech is always on the forefront, but there's so many things that, that could impact how we do business in real estate. And so I'm taking it as a challenge that right now, as AI is literally growing up in front of our eyes. Last week, there was 4 or 5 announcements that's happening, in the AI world that just completely just leaps and bounds, above what we already know. And so just educating people about that is super exciting. And so, but like you said, with the quote, if somebody didn't have that idea and didn't want to put it out there, I mean, who knows what kind of research and development they did to launch the iPhone in the beginning. We were all thinking like, oh, it's a phone with the screen, like that means like I can call people, on the go. But we didn't think about all this other stuff. Like who would have thought you could go up to a cash register and you can pay with your phone? It's your wallet, right? It's your internet. It's your texting, and you're seeing what's happening with everybody else on social media, like right in the palm of your hand. You can play games. You can like it's almost like everything that you would do, you would use your phone for in one way or another. And so nobody thought that. I know I didn't. I was like, oh, great, I can listen to my music on this device. And then I can call my mom, right? And goody, that's great. Like, we'll just go on with our lives, not knowing all of these other things that somebody thought of that we could use the phone for. So he obviously thought that, hey, this is more revolutionary than we could ever imagine. And I think the same way with our new technology now.
Well, please keep me on your mailing list because I love hearing all the new things that you're learning. And I always learn so much from you when you talk about AI and stuff. We are light years over here in Virginia. We're light years behind you guys. So we may still have those 1 or 2 faxers in our market. So
that's awesome. Those are novelties that we love. Like, oh my God, that's amazing! You're still doing that.
Yeah, I had an agent the other day tell me it's too cold outside. I don't have internet. I was like, okay.
Oh my gosh. Okay, we can only imagine here, like if somebody said that, like, what?
Yeah.
Right. Well, I'm going to put all of your speaking engagement and all that kind of stuff, in the notes, in the comments for people who are watching here, to be able to see you either live or online in an interview of any kind. And I'll get all of your stuff in there so that people can get a hold of you. And other than that, what's the best way for people to reach out to you if they're watching?
Yeah, so my email, Ashley at SELL757.com, or you can always call my phone, 757-761-0043.
Perfect. Thank you so much. All right. We'll look forward to, seeing how you take on the world from here on forward. Thank you for being here, and we will talk to you soon again.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.